What's going on, everyone? Sid Gordon here with the Core Medical Podcast, and I have a special friend here. I use this phrase a lot. There's people that in my life that I care about deeply, that I do business with. There's people in my life that are family that I care about immensely. Well, Will is a crossover between the two. Amazing guy. We have some great stuff to talk about. So, Will, thanks for coming in today, brother.
Yeah, man. Thank you for the kind words. And, same goes to Sid. When I moved down to Florida, he was one of the first guys I met down here. And, we've done a lot together between training and hunting and just talking shit. So he's a right-hand man of mine and a guy that I've, been very blessed to call a friend down here. So let's get into it.
Thanks, brother. So Will is an interesting guy. He is what I like to say, like one of the 1%ers of trainers, because the majority of trainers, which is where his real base came from, we'll get into the other stuff that he's been successful with, but I look at most trainers, 99% of trainers, as someone who can't find another direction to go, and a lot of times lose the longevity. But you've really had a lot of growth. You've really come up with new ways to keep people engaged. You've trained people from people that are super overweight to guys that are trying to get in shape but halfway there. Right. And then you've trained pro athletes, the top of the top in the country. When we first started to chat, hanging out, you were with XP. Can you talk to us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so XP was Tony Villani's program, and it's funny how I met Tony. I actually just shot him a Facebook message. This was probably like back in 2013. My plan originally was to go to physical therapy school, and I was kind of back home taking a few classes that I need to get a grade or two up in from college. So was doing that and doing an internship back home. And Dexter McLeon, who trained Tony. Dexter was a good friend of mine. He played in the NFL for 13 years, and he was like, hey, man, because I always loved working with athletes. And
how did he train Tony?
So that Tony trained Dexter.
Okay, I got you.
So Tony trained Dexter. So whenever Dex was playing, Tony was down here in Chris Carter's fast program and everything. Yep. So Dex was like, hey, man, you need to, shoot Tony a message. And that was when he kind of first came out with the shred mill. So I just shot him a Facebook message. He was doing a mentorship type program, paid him a little bit of money, came down, spent a week with him and got his certification. Then he offered me a job to come in. And so I started up there, man. And, XP was really, like your boy Eric Berry. EB was one of the big guys there. We had Mark Ingram, Travis Kelce, all those guys. So I go from, really just kind of having fun, giving back to my community to, working with some of the best NFL pros in the world. And, I'm super grateful for Tony for bringing me in and giving me that opportunity. I was there for like 5 to 6 years, and that eventually morphed into other things. Mm-hmm. But yeah, that's kind of how I got my start.
Why is that program so different? I mean, I know why,
right?
But Tony designed something unique with somebody else, and it really does make you faster because, I mean, I'm like a turtle, and it made me way faster. Yeah,
so Tony's a little bit different than a lot of strength coaches. If you get into like your old school strength and conditioning, like your back squat, your heavy lifting and whatnot, Tony is more of a speed and agility guy. And, a lot of these pros, once they've been through, 4 years in a college weight room, they don't want to be clean and heavy, squatting heavy, deadlifting heavy. So Tony, I mean, while, he had, kind of Andrew and Doug and partly me, I did more speed and agility with him. But, we had Doug and Andrew, and, Andrew was kind of like me. He did a little bit of both. But Tony was really, really focused on speed and agility, right? So, he was kind of, that we did a lot more running and cutting and whatnot in the off season instead of just, lifting these guys to death. So, yeah, I would say that's what made Tony's program different than a lot is, his emphasis on, foot placement, movement, speed and agility. Whereas it wasn't just, linear strength cycles. Like he was, in my opinion, I think Tony's the best to ever do it with speed and agility. And, Chris Carter was a big part of that, and Chris, being one of the greatest route runners ever in the history of the NFL, kind of came along and just, Tony was originally a basketball guy, and it kind of morphed into football. But I would say that's what was different in XP's program was the emphasis on speed and agility and not running these guys off, because a lot of these guys are, in their later 20s or 30s. So, they don't want to be, it's not like a college weight room where you're just lifting heavy weights and banging weights around. It's really, learning how to move and stay efficient in your movement and your speed. Yeah.
So that foundation is kind of already there, but most colleges aren't doing what you guys were doing
right.
there.
Right. And still aren't, Tony's, there's, the shred mill. Like,
he's been trying to get that in colleges
for sure.
for years and years. And there's only like 4 or 5 that have it, right?
I think Clemson. I think there's one at Clemson. There's definitely, I think there's one at Bama, maybe. Don't quote me on this. It's been a few years since I've been there, and I actually talked to Tony.
But there's a lot of colleges that could use it. And
for sure,
and it keeps you way healthier.
Man, and even I go back. Like I'll go back up to Ole Miss, and I'll see, and I'm not putting down any strength coaches or anything, but there's not. The emphasis on you go out and just watch guys, so many false steps, learning how to change direction. So many of these guys, if they would just learn foot placement and how to properly move, and you work that in training and it translates to the field, there's still to this day not enough emphasis on that.
And Will comes from a background where he played a lot of sports.
For sure.
You played in college?
Yeah. I walked on I had a serious knee injury my senior year in high school, so I walked on for a brief period at Ole Miss. But I had an ACL, MCL, meniscus, and it was literally going into my senior year, and that was over 10 years ago, so it was a little bit different back then, a little bit harder to come back from. So that kind of derailed me a little bit. I was never anything special, but yeah, I definitely.
Of course you were.
But I love the game, baseball, football. I always tried to be an athlete, and still try to be an athlete to some extent.
Before we change topics, tell us about the shred mill.
All right, so basically, Tony designed, it's a self-propelled treadmill, right? And, you can bring your incline down, turn the resistance up. I think you can put up to about 450 pounds of resistance on it and really get into that drive phase of the sprint. Or, you can simulate running a hill and, opening up your stride and kind of working on that back end speed. So, and the thing about the shred mill is the way it's designed with the magnets and, the rollers and the belt, you cannot move it efficiently without striding efficiently. So while we can work on mechanics and everything of how to properly run on the turf, and all those mechanics do translate, but just by guys getting reps in on that shred mill, it's naturally going to clean up their running form, because you cannot move it efficiently without running efficiently. And it's not like, a lot of these woodway curves that you see guys get running on and jumping 23 and 24 miles an hour, that curve promotes stride forward. Well, when your foot hits the ground in front of you, it's actually a braking effect. If I want you to go forward, I push you from behind. So running, you want to apply force behind you, which is what the shred mill does, versus a curve that you can just stride forward on that belt and shoot it up to 23, 24 miles an hour.
Yeah, well, I can definitely tell you that it definitely is difficult to run on it if you can't run right, because it took me quite some time to get going on it, and it's a brutal pounding too. Yeah. So all right, well, what are you doing now?
All right, so I bought into my own gym. I kind of started not really competing, but I kind of got in the CrossFit fad and really enjoyed training, and I got into the lower end of CrossFit competitions. So XP was great, and I love those guys, but I just kind of gotten to the point where I didn't see myself growing a whole lot there. I was doing great, and it was a great experience, but I wanted to do more. I wanted to become a gym owner, So I bought into CrossFit Hype, and I'm still very plugged in over there. I still do all my training there. I still do about maybe 10 to 15 hours of personal training a week there. But since during COVID, Dan Lambert at American Top Team, Dan and Tiago and Richie, they had split ways with a prior strength coach. So they asked me if I would come in, and I was doing a lot of medical supply sourcing at the time and whatnot, and still doing some of my training, but it was COVID, so I had a lot of downtime. So when they asked me to come in and take over for Phil, I was like, this is a no-brainer. So now Everton and I are the two head strength coaches there. So really working with a ton of MMA fighters, which all that.
But you were working with a lot of guys at XPE too.
Yeah. So Tiago Alves and Haider Hassan, Santiago Ponzinibbio, Joanna, they would all kind of come to XPE and do their strength and conditioning with me. So I think whenever Top Team was looking for someone, it kind of made sense, because I had already had a relationship with them. And so yeah, I've been there since I guess 2020 now, because it was during COVID. So grateful to be there, have the opportunity to work with a ton of elite level fighters, and it's cool and it's humbling to have all these these big UFC cards on the weekend, Bellator, PFL, whatever it is, and know that I had a small piece in some of that.
So we met XPE, we formed a good bond there, I'd say. I talk about him. JP was the owner of the facility. Tony ran the facility and was his partner. And I can tell you, walking in there after work and having you and seeing all these guys training all these pro athletes, I was blessed to be able to go there and take advantage of the facility because of JP. But when I was training jiu-jitsu quite a bit, and going there to work out and taking these classes, for those of you out there that have never had the opportunity to work with someone super high end and be surrounded by all that greatness, pro athlete, it's a different feel, right? You go in the first day, I'm like nervous, you know what I'm saying?
Right.
But I wasn't training with them, but you're still in the same facility. And then you also have this huge kids program, the best of the best, you know, hitting baseballs in there. You know, it was quite the experience for me. And, you know, being in a gym atmosphere, I always say this to people: if you're at the gym, if you're training a certain sport, if you're competing jiu-jitsu and you're the best there, it's time to find somewhere else to go.
Right.
And I really felt like in that place, it was so humbling. I was younger then, you know, 10 years ago. It was so humbling, but it really kept me super motivated. And that place really had a special energy to it, you know. CrossFit Hype, I train with you over there too. Different feel, but
we've definitely been through some facilities, but in a good way, you know. I mean, it's good to, and I still like to move around, you know, and you know, train in different spots. But yeah, Sid and I have been. I mean, shoot, man, we've probably had a relationship for about 10 years now. I would
more,
say.
I'd say, yeah, probably. So, to the people out there, you know, different walks of life.
Right.
How do you diagnose someone when they come through the door to what's right for them? Because I know you spend a lot of time doing that. You analyze situations. You overthink it like I do with my business, which is the best. How do you make people feel comfortable, and how do you really design a program for them? Because I ask trainers that stuff all the time, and I'm like, and like, well, what are your injuries? And that's pretty much it, right?
Right.
But you have so much experience and so much functionality, weightlifting. I mean, you were like gigantic at Hype when you were doing the CrossFit stuff. I'm gonna get some pictures and post them on here of you when it goes live. But can you talk to us about that a little bit?
Yeah, so I mean, I do think one you know, thing that I've become good at as a trainer is I really have worked with everybody. You know, whether it's, you know, elite level athletes. You know, the one reason why I love MMA so much is because, you know, you know this too, like, you can be the best fighter in the world. You can literally be the best fighter in the world. But if you get into those, you know, rounds 2, 3, 4, 5, if you don't have a gas tank, you can't do shit. So, like,
and sometimes in the first round, if your opponent's pressing you.
Yeah, exactly. Like, so, you know, that when, you know, if somebody doesn't have a tank and my fighter gets gassed, that's going to be very evident. And I like that, you know. So, you know, whether it's training MMA or, you know, speed and agility, NFL combine prep, running a 40, or just getting, you know, a general health fitness population person in shape, I've kind of done it all. One is just assessing their goals, and, you know, now it's more about wellness. And, you know, people think like functional fitness, right? A lot of people think like, oh, stand on a Bosu ball with one leg and catch a tennis ball. That's not functional. Functional is the things that we do every day: running, walking, squatting, picking things up. So, like, you know, being able to properly squat, properly deadlift, you know, as long as they don't have injuries that are preventing them, or, you know, would prevent them to do from doing such movements. But when I assess somebody, I want them to feel good in life, you know, like, you know, get out of bed in the morning and feel, and, you know, it kind of goes hand in hand with what you do. So, you know, functional fitness, the things that we do every day: walking, running, sitting down, standing up, that's a squat. You know, picking something up off the floor, that's a deadlift. And you want to work within those means. And, you know, and a lot of it is kind of going to depend on what their goals are, but being able to function in life. And yeah, you've always got to assess gait, you know, imbalances, instabilities, and things like that. But having my client feel better as they go throughout in life.
So something you just touched on, which is actually super cool. I never even thought about this.
Yeah.
When I first moved to Florida, I lifted quite a bit back in the day. And I don't think until I met you or maybe Rudy, one of the two, I never knew how to do a correct squat or a deadlift. I didn't. It was just like, you know, hammer it. And then I got older, and this is embarrassing. I'll tell the story. I think I was just 12, 13 years ago. I bent over to pick up 2 cinder blocks, and I didn't squat it. I just like freaking like, you know, jacked it up, and I was ruined for like almost a month.
Yeah, low back.
Yeah, exactly. Destroyed. And like to the point where I couldn't sit in a chair to stand up. I was hunched over all the time. And, you know, and at that time, we don't have the information that we have now, you know, about, you know, the things that I know that I can do internally at core to help that out.
Right.
But think about how many people are injured because they don't know that.
Yeah, you know, and a lot of that is just, you know, you want to break it, like literally, like if I'm going to start squatting, like we're starting just body weight foundational movements. And, you know, it is like, I would much rather see, you know, if it's not so much Olympic lifting, but like I would much rather see someone move a lighter weight with better form and more efficiently than, move 500 pounds, with a squat that's not to depth or people, too forward on your toes. So it really is about building the movement pattern, almost from even a body weight standpoint, and then working into those heavier weights. So it's all just breaking it down literally to body weight, and then we start adding the load.
So, interesting question. When you assess someone who's 20 and you assess someone who's 50,
right,
and let's just say the 50-year-old's in close to my physique, which is I'm 45.
Athlete right here.
Yeah, right. How do you keep, or what type of program, what are you thinking about to make something designed for them properly so they have longevity in the gym?
Okay.
Because it drives me crazy. I can't go and bench 350 anymore. Right. I don't go past 185. I'm super fragile in my body, but I do a lot of reps.
Yep.
There's people that would, I had a trainer about 3 years ago that was trying to get me to lift heavy. I'm like, dude, I'm just not doing it. Right. I want that longevity. A lot of the listeners out there are core patients that are in their 30s and 40s, and they want that longevity.
Right.
I see a lot of them in their 40s and 50s that are still lifting heavy, super heavy. Right. Can you talk about those two comparisons?
So, kind of a few different things to touch on there. So one, you got to assess the person's goals. There's definitely a place for heavy strength training. Obviously it's taxing on the nervous system. So like say, I'll use my fighters as an example. Okay. So typically I run like 2 8 to 9 week strength cycles per year. And we might start with like a 3x9 for a couple weeks and then run all the way down into a 3x1 into a max, right? But over that 8 to 9 weeks, you're getting a progressive load on the CNS, which is one of the components to getting stronger. So you can't just run heavy lifting year round because you're going to fry your nervous system, So for the people that do want to get stronger, yes, and then other than those 2 8 to 9 week cycles, typically I'll work in like 3 to 4 week micro cycles, keep the volume a little bit lower, but the weight a little bit heavier. Or we might do like a push press where we're working on speed. So it's all about, structuring your blocks correctly in order to not get that continual overload on the CNS. So that would be more like a strength.
What's CNS stand for?
Central nervous system.
Okay, gotcha.
So like that would be more for like somebody that does need strength games. So like with my fighters, I'll do that about twice a year. My fighters that are in fight camp, we're not really doing any targeted strength work. So like say I've got someone that's, and typically that's 6 to 7 weeks out. When you get within 6 weeks of training, I'm pulling you out of targeted strength work and we're focusing on that alactic power, your conditioning, your speed, and your power. So like, because it's very hard to be at your fittest and your fastest when you're at your strongest. So like whenever I've got people in a fight camp, I pull them out of the strength work and throw them into my camp group. And like I said, that's bike sprints, that's anaerobic conditioning, that's med ball tosses, like jumping, like
all the stuff I hate. Yeah,
exactly. Really focusing on like being athletic. So that's more like athletic components. So like general fitness, say you've got someone, because if you move correctly and if you periodize correctly, even if you're lifting heavy, you shouldn't be dealing with those aches and pains every day. If you're dealing with those aches, and now I'm not talking about being sore, I'm talking about back hurting, knees hurting, neck hurting. If you're lifting like that and you have real pain, one, you should probably get checked out by a doctor, just to get checked out by a professional, or you're moving incorrectly. Because, I can go hit a 450-pound back squat and my knees aren't going to hurt the next day. But so if lifting heavy is fine, as long as you're moving the weight correctly and you're periodizing your program correctly.
So so the guys out there that are, that spent their whole life just going to the gym and just lifting super heavy, what's the flaws there? Because, I don't want to throw anything in anyone's face, but we have a lot of people out there that are going to listen to this podcast that are in the gym maxing out constantly and never coming off the gas. What for that person there that's so used to that and that's what they love in the gym? Right. I mean, it's not going to last that long.
For sure, you can't. And man, that's why you really, unless you're pretty versed in it yourself, you need to be with a professional when it comes to your programming. Because if you're just lifting heavy all year round, you're gonna have issues. Whether it's overtraining is kind of an overused term. Like it's really hard to get into true overtraining, but you kind of have that overreaching phase, right, where you're purposefully pushing your body beyond its limits to the point of recovering and being fitter or stronger. Does that make sense?
Yeah, 100%.
So if you're just consistently, redlining every day or lifting heavy every day, you will eventually reach that overtraining training threshold, which it's really hard to get there. But like I said, it's more about, I like to work on percentages. So like if we're doing, we might start a program at 55% of a 1RM and run it, over 8 to 9 weeks all the way into a 95%, into a 101%, trying to hit a max, So it's about working in percentages and able to get stronger. You don't get stronger by going in and maxing your back squat every day. You get stronger by doing targeted percentage work over a course of time and then giving your body a period of deload, which you'll have different coaches give you different things on a deload. I personally, especially for athletes and especially for somebody who's got to go run a 40 or fight in an MMA fight, you have to deload. The extreme, powerlifting, like that old school form of squatting, they might have other opinions on a deload phase, but I personally think that you should deload after every heavy strength cycle.
I remember back at XP, I wanted to get my bench up, and you took away flat bench, maybe you used dumbbell press incline for 2 or 3 weeks straight.
Yeah.
Before I went back to the flat bench, and when I went back to the flat bench, I was I think I benched maybe 15, 20% more. I guess maybe the isolated.
And bench, a lot of times if I finish up a bench cycle, usually we're gonna do some dumbbell volume for 3 to 4 weeks, and I never stay on the flat bench year round. We might do a 3-week microcycle of some bench press, and I'm not huge on bench press, but there's definitely a place for it. But especially if you have shoulder issues, so you're dumbbell bench is gonna be the way to go.
So, I just learned a shitload right there, so thanks. I didn't even know you're that smart, and I'm fucking with you. So, your family, real quick. Your mom, absolute gems, one of the sweetest ladies on the face of the earth.
Yeah, we ran into we saw Sid out to eat a few weeks ago at Capitol Grill, and he picked up the tab, so I got to get him back.
Listen, I'm not used to it, but I'll take it.
Yeah.
So you grew up in Mississippi?
I was born in Missouri, and that was my mom and dad divorced when I was 2, so I lived in Missouri until I was about 4, and then moved to Meridian, Mississippi, and that's still kind of home base for my family. And I I was back in Mississippi, back in Oxford this past weekend, but hunting, fishing, all the things Sid likes to do, that was a huge part of my life growing up. Still, his business partner Josh comes up with me all the time, still trying to get him up there.
Maybe I'll go this year.
Yeah, whenever. Yeah, we'll get a trip.
Yeah, so your mom, what type of backbone was she? Dad? Because my story is my mother was everything.
Yeah, my mom, she was awesome. She was kind of like Hollywood back in the day. She was made of cotton. She was a Wilhelmina model. She was involved in Miss America to some extent.
She's still beautiful.
Yeah. So hopefully I got some of those genes, and I'll be like her when I'm her age. But and she, I was an only child. She struggled for a while to get pregnant with me. She just, my dad had the measles virus when he was younger, so that led to some fertility issues, and she ended up having me when she was 40 years old. So I'm her world, and growing up, it drove me crazy, but looking back on it, I wouldn't do anything different. So Mom, love you, and thank you for bringing me into this world.
Yeah, I'm an only child too.
Yeah.
And a similar situation there, but I can tell you that you look back on those super, super hard times and that struggle, and I think that's probably the reason why you are the way you are now. When things are really handed to you across the board all the time,
right,
and you don't get to and even if it's not just a financial struggle, maybe it's just relationship struggle, or for instance, sometimes if you have a single parent, that parent doesn't know what to do in certain situations because you don't have that other figure in place. Yeah. For me, I really wanted to break the chain of chaos that went on in my house. Not all the time physical, but just there was a lot going on there. So when I got older, I really wanted to be super successful was my main goal, and then that goes away once you get close to it. And then really it's about servicing other people and finding ways to make others super successful. Talk to us about what your other successes come from, where you think that driving force is, and kind of what brought you there.
It's one thing. I have a really good family, and I've maintained really good relationships with pretty much everybody in my family, and I didn't grow up with a lot of that hurt and pain that people feel from parents and whatnot. So And my dad, even though my parents got divorced when I was 2 and I didn't grow up around him a ton, my dad passed away my freshman year of college of prostate cancer. But my dad was always a really, really good dad. And he was always there, and he called me every day, and he was always at my football games, and he was even though my parents were divorced and my dad wasn't around, he was always there, and I never felt, and still to this day, have never felt really let down by a parent in my life. And I was a hard-headed kid growing up. I definitely had my own share of issues, and but I just had a really, really strong family, and to be honest with you, a lot of the things that go on in life, just the sketchy business, like just everything. The way I grew up, I didn't really even realize that a lot of that went on until I moved down here to South Florida. So
this was quite the hit when you come here.
It was a big difference, and that's a testament to my parents that, hey man, I didn't. A lot of this stuff that I see on a day in and day out basis in a place like, South Florida, I didn't grow up with at all. It was, we didn't have a whole lot when I was growing up. Whenever my mom married my stepdad, that was a game changer, and he's been great to me. My stepdad, I didn't maybe necessarily accept him as a father until my later years. But he's been a dad to me, and he is a dad to me, and he's just an old soul, and man, he loves getting in the woods, and that's where my love and passion for hunting and fishing and everything came from, because that was all I did when I grew up. It was either sports, I was either at practice playing a game, or I was in the woods, and my love for the outdoors definitely come from my stepfather. And I think whenever you say how did that bring me to the man that I am today, I still have my own issues, and we all struggle, and I'm never perfect, but I think overall I am a pretty good guy, and I try to do people the right way, and that's just a testament to the way that my parents raised me, and the fact that I didn't, they never brought me into that world of a lot of the kind of negative things that go on nowadays.
So we have a comment from Phil Garraway.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
And I bring this up to a lot of people, and some people do it by accident. Some people do it on purpose. Some people aren't even realizing that they're doing it and never figure it out. But right. You can go about life and find a job, find a good employer that takes good care of you, and ride it out. Make some good investments, and
right.
and be successful and comfortable when you get older. Right. I think the most important thing, that I see and I suggest to do for the youngsters out there is, even if you have that relationship with a good job, it's really important to build other relationships in case shit hits the fan.
Right.
And a lot of people don't take that into consideration, right? So, for instance, if I have someone working for me and my mistake, they get terminated.
Right.
And they don't have any other relationships. They've been with me for a long time.
Yeah, you've got a great staff,
They're kind of screwed, They're with me for 8 years, 10 years, whatever it might be. Those outside relationships, even if you don't feel like you need them right then and there, you still got to build them, right?
Right.
So, for instance, you've done something very similar to what I did.
Yeah.
If I don't know something, I don't go read and research. I fucking find someone who mastered it, and I go latch on them. Like Phil's instrumental across the board. The guy's a fucking stud.
Dude, he's like a best friend / second dad. That whole family, they've been nothing but great to me.
Amazing, right?
Yeah.
And if you're in their good graces, and they really are humble.
Yep.
Grateful people. Phil was an inspiring part of my life. He freaking saved my life at one point, and he's the only job I've ever had where I've received a W-2 paycheck from my entire life.
Right.
But we've stayed really close in contact.
Yeah.
And I've bounced stuff like how to be a dad off of him, how to be a better businessman, what to do in certain situations. Yeah. And without those relationships, even if you're just training, right?
Right.
But you don't and you met him because I referred him to you to train, didn't I?
You did, yeah. He had finished up his cancer treatment, and he was looking to, Phil's just, man, he's an amazing guy, and I think, he's a bigger guy, and he wouldn't mind me saying that, but I think he really just loved getting in the gym and having and just coming in to hang out. Phil was a headache to train sometimes because, man, this better than anybody. Phil does what the fuck he wants to do. But, that's a great relationship.
He's probably a monster in college and high school.
Oh yeah, dude. I mean, he's a strong guy.
Yeah, he's still,
he's
still
got an
is.
athletic family. That's as good of a family as you're gonna find.
Oh yeah, the kids are great.
Yeah.
His wife's amazing. She's one of my favorites. Phil is going to do what he wants, and I think he probably deserves that now.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
From all the shit he's put up with.
Absolutely.
I mean, I took years off the guy's life for sure. So yeah, those outside business relationships, like even if you feel like you're going to be at the same place forever, it's really great to venture out and have other great relationships, because he was probably inspirational in other things that you've done since then.
Phil, whether it's, I have other, like I said, I dabbled in some medical supply sourcing, and, I've got a few brands that I'm involved in, and that I've got ownership in, and just business relationships, business advice. Phil's given me as much as any. You're right up there. You two guys have been instrumental in just a ton of relationships and connections that I've gotten and I've made, and that go far beyond what brought us together. So
tell us about what else you got going on right now.
So I'm still over at Hype doing my personal training, obviously at Top Team on OpperMed, the medical supply sourcing business. Matt Simmons was in that, and I still work with Matt a good bit, but a lot of that slowed down after COVID and whatnot. We worked on a few things together during that time.
Yep.
But we have a supplement company that's going to be coming out called Tactical Nutrition, and we cut no corners. We're going to use the best ingredients, and really want to make my business partner. He's a veteran, so it's going to be veteran owned and operated. I'm not a veteran, but I know that there's a ton that listen to this show and how involved you've been. So I always want to give back and show my support and then how grateful I am for them. So we're veteran owned, veteran operated, and we're going to really try to get involved with several nonprofits and work with the military on that.
What is going to be the claim to fame on that? If you can tell us, like, do you have special products that you can?
Yeah. So I mean, obviously me through working with athletes, and I'm very versed in supplements as well. So we're going to use supplements that are tried and true and tested, that actually work. We're not gonna put extra shit in there just to like your beta alanines, your creatine monohydrates, your whey isolates. We're going to use supplements that are tried, true and tested, that are actually going to work. Mm-hmm. And we're not going to throw a ton of artificial sweeteners and everything in there. I mean, our supplements are going to taste good, but we're founded on the quality of the product, and so it's going to be, things that, like I said, are actually studied, and I think we've got 5 SKUs right now. We're going to do a pre-workout with some beta, some creatine monohydrate and whatnot. We're going to do a whey protein isolate. We're going to have an all-natural testosterone booster. We're going to have a carb supplement and a BCAA supplement, and we'll expand from there, but really just trying to build good content. We want to have that military feel. We want to help out veterans. And like I said, our name is Tactical Nutrition. So we're really going to try to shoot for that.
It's been interesting not ever being in the military and having 70% of our patient base at core is either active duty, special forces, soft, 3-letter agencies,
for sure,
first responders. The amount of knowledge and the amount of gratitude, I've said this before, don't get me wrong, I love all my civilians. Fortune 500 business owners have taught me so much, but as far as like learning gratitude and like how lucky we are, that community has been like so inspiring. And I say, like, if I could just have all vets all the time, it'd be amazing, because they're so grateful and just easy to work with. And
well, you probably get to see a lot of that because, and I've listened, I'm a listener of your content and your podcast as well. And, I get to hear the stories of, when these guys are depressed and they come back and, they're not feeling well. And then you have the ability to, get them on TRT or whatever they need. And just, because people don't understand your hormones. I mean, that's your brain. Like, so when you're off and, so I'm sure that you really get to see these guys like come back to life and, find themselves again. And that's awesome.
Well, the hardest thing is, man, and you're probably going to witness a lot of it, is, you probably already have too, is that when they come back from deployment or they're active, the VA is giving them things to make things worse.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
Like the amount of, I had one patient that was being prescribed, Ritalin, Adderall, Nuvisual, and one other medication all at the same time. And then he had a bad back, so he's getting Perks and Vikes. And then he had Xanax and Valium that he would take. Right. And that was his like wake up drug, get through the day drug, take your painkiller drug, not fall asleep at work drug, and then crash at night drug.
And you think about doing that over a course of time and just how dependent you're getting on all that.
So that with all the trauma to the body, like I mean, we both know cortisol level, big deal. You know, you know that gets beat up a lot, and with especially with overtraining, I see that quite a bit, and also being in the military, those peaks and valleys that they're going through, and it's been insane to see that. You know, even 3/4 of a cc of testosterone fixes a lot of the problems, because they're all suppressed because of either the VA suppressing it with all these drugs, right? And then also on top of that, the amount of trauma and stress they put through their body. Vitamin intake, huge, something you guys could definitely look at. You know, we don't get too much into that, except like the bio boost and stuff like
all
that.
The things that I've got going on, I can't say too much about this yet, but I'm really excited about it. It's been a really cool product. But we have my uncle, my buddy Alex, and I, we have an all-natural men's skincare line that should be launching in early 2024, and Tactical should be launching early 2024 as well. So those have been two things that, you know, should be really, really cool and hopefully successful. And
if I know you, they'll be fine.
Yeah, I hope so. But yeah, so we're, you know, and I go to core as well. I personally don't take TRT just because I don't need it yet. You know, I walk around, and, you know, a lot of that, you know, because I used to overtrain myself, and I found myself in kind of a hole that Sid helped me get out naturally. I think we did like some HCG and stuff like that. You know, so I am totally natural now, but I still do all my injectable vitamins, my glutathione, my NAD. I don't stay on it year round because, you know, my diet and my supplementation, my diet, my nutrition is really good. But, you know, when I do need something, I always go to Sid. And, you know, I don't take, the reason I'm natural isn't because of, you know, like me being in sports and like the, you know, it being accepted in sports. I just don't feel that I'm at a place that I'm 33 now, and like my I think I'm around 650.
658.
So I'm okay, but I can assure you, the day that I need it, I will be on it, and I will be going to Sid.
Yeah, I mean, we tell everyone the same thing.
Yeah.
I mean, we're onboarding, you know, between 150 and 200 new patients a week right now.
Yeah.
And we put a lot of people on the same program because for me, it's a lifelong situation.
And I do want to say this, you know, it wasn't something that I had to be on forever, you know, within, you know, I think my test literally got down to like 220, and within 5 to 6 weeks of his protocol, you know, I was back to normal, and, you know, then stayed completely natural until this day. And man, my blood work is pretty much perfect with everything I do.
It is perfect. Yeah. I mean, the commitment to testosterone's, you know, when I was coming up, you know, I'm quite a bit older than you, and when I was coming up, people in their 30s didn't need testosterone. Like when I started core 15 years ago, it was very seldom that people would need testosterone in their 30s. Now, because people aren't aware and educated on what's going on in the world as far as food intake, training properly, vitamin supplementation, taking rest, because at that time you were in some freaking crazy ass shape.
So one thing I want to touch on real quick that I wanted to touch on earlier, just since you brought it up, people in training, you know, they always ask me, like, you know, for all this recovery stuff, like whether it's the cryo or the cold tub or the sauna, and all that stuff's great, but that should supplement, like, your recovery is your sleep and your nutrition. You know, like if you're not, you know, I mean, you know, and it's not just the amount of sleep. It's like, you know, getting into those deep sleep phases in your REM cycles. Yeah. So like, if you're sleeping like shit and you're eating like shit, it doesn't matter what you're doing in the rest of your life. You can go get in the cold tub, do as much contrast as you want to. You know, that has to be the foundation of your recovery, is having a good sound diet and sleeping. Because, you know, like I said, if those two things aren't in gear, you might as well forget about the other things.
So what I started to do from Nick K, and he you know, he doesn't get to sleep as much as I do because he's running like crazy, but I flipped my schedule to like having it drive into the evening more to where I'm pretty much a hard stop around 4:30 unless chaos comes, which is often. I'm home, I'm spending time with the family. I'm in bed like Monday through Friday by like 8:30, and I've noticed that I get into way better sleep before midnight than I feel so much more refreshed than if I sleep from 8:30 to 4:30 than if I sleep from 11:30 to 7. Like that early days.
And I think a lot of that is just, you know, having the discipline to get in bed early and start your day early, you know, even though while the amount of hours, and you know, I'm not to get too deep on this, but like, you know, I'm huge on no caffeine, you know, within 30 minutes to an hour of waking up, try to get into some natural sunlight every morning, because like, you know, that's going to get those neuroreceptors firing. Like, you know, if you can get a good night's sleep, you know, hydrate in the morning, you know, get your 30 ounces of water in, get some fats in the morning to maybe curb your appetite a little bit, getting some sunlight. When you can get your natural circadian rhythm, you know, over all these things, you're going to sleep better, you're going to feel better. So I think part of that, like you just said, even though the amount of sleep might be the same, just having the discipline to go to bed early and get up early, and, you know, wake up when the sun wakes up.
Yep.
Just is going to naturally make you feel better.
Yeah, I mean, so I train a lot in the morning, and then I go right outside. I hit my sauna. It's still dark.
Yep.
My cold plunge, the sun's pretty much coming up, and then when the sun's up, I shoot my bow a little bit in the backyard. So I'm doing that kind of without even thinking about it, and my sleep's good. And I can tell you, as I get older, it's more and more important. Like, we're so resilient young, right?
Yeah.
But like, we get older, and it's like, oh my gosh, this is you're dragging, man.
And if you have, like, you know, if you have access to it, cold exposure first thing in the morning is great. We have a cold plunge at Top Team. Typically, I'll do once a week, I'll do some contrast, you know, get really, really hot for 5 minutes, and then go jump in that cold tub for a minute, try to get like 3 to 4 rounds of that in. And then, you know, that's just going to get your parasympathetic and your sympathetic nervous systems talking to each other.
Do you think that back and forth is better than like 15 minutes in the sun and then 3 minutes in the plunge?
I do. Yeah,
okay.
I do. Just because it, you know,
because I'm 15 minutes
and
then
a lot of
3.
the research, you know, a lot of this stuff hasn't really been studied to the extent that it should be. And I think now that cold exposure is such a thing, I think it will start to be studied. But for contrast, the most effective thing that I've seen, I think, is that 5 to a minute and a half. So like 5 minutes really, really hot, a minute to a minute and a half really, really cold. That's for that contrast work, right? Now, if I'm sore, you know, like if I just want to decrease inflammation, getting in that ice bath and just sitting for 8 to 10 minutes is going to be better at getting your inflammation down. Heat actually increases inflammation for a little bit. Cold decreases, right? So if you're really, really sore, you want to get that inflammation down, you want to feel better, I would say sit for like 8 to 10 minutes. But if you're more tired, you feel like it's maybe like a little bit of an overtrained issue, or you might not have slept enough, doing that contrast is going to be where you want to be. So they have two completely different, you know, responses in the body.
Well, man, I got to tell you, this was freaking awesome. Super educating. My audience is going to love it. Our patients are going to love it. Guys, follow Will. His information is below. Please follow the YouTube page, guys. Super important to me. Us on Spotify. Keep an eye on Will and his new products coming out. I will be a client for sure, and we're starting to train again this week together, so I'm excited. Maybe you'll see some transformation. My arms might really fill up the shirt. And I love you, brother. Thank you so much.
Love you, man. Thank you for the opportunity, Sid, and hope everybody listens and check us out.
Thanks.